Hello again. Welcome back to Hall 6. Today and right now, we welcome Tomasz Manugiewicz, who is a general manager at Grand Parade, part of William Hill, an avid biker, skier, and sailor. Who's also a lecturer at AGH University of Science and Technology. Um, he tells me that one of the interesting facts about him is he's actually done some work for the US Air Force. But today he is here to tell us how to improve our software design and unlock our own autonomy. So, with that tautology, I shall hand stuff over to you, Tomasz.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for this introduction. Yes, indeed, I did some work for U.S. Air Force. This is not the topic for today, but if you are curious, definitely we can chat about that after the talk. And today, within next, I think 30-40 minutes, I would like to spend with you to discuss the topic how to unlock our autonomy and how we can improve our design by unlocking this autonomy. The first question I have for you, and if we would be in the face-to-face day, I would love to see your hands up or down. But the question that you can ask for yourself is, do you feel autonomous at work? The answer that I know from my experience as an engineer, it is challenging to feel autonomous at work for us. But I would like to tell you that there is an autonomy in you waiting to be unlocked. We just need to know how to unlock that. Why is that? Why the autonomy is in us? Because we want to be in charge of our own lives. And that's our very simple need that is inhibited in us and inherited since the beginning of the world. That we would like to drive the world, run our lives. And it was described by those two brave guys, Mr. Ryan and Mr. Dechi. I think it was 1985. They wrote a book, Self-Determination Theory, and based on their research, they said that we are driven by three main aspects: by the competence, but by relatedness, and by autonomy. Competence-wise, being here as engineers, you all know that we would like to learn. We would like to solve riddles, solve puzzles. We would like to learn new things, new technologies, and so on. So this competence bit is very, very much important in the IT industry. Then we have this relatedness bit, which is not so important, but actually nowadays after COVID, after pandemic, it is getting more and more popular. So building the relationship between each other, that's very important for us as a human beings because we would like to be part of something bigger. I'm not talking even about the company, but let's imagine you have some hobby. You play role play games, or you play video games. You would like to belong to some forum. So that's relatedness topic. And the last but not least, and very first for today, it's autonomy. We would like to be autonomous as well. So that's those three aspects they found out. And for me as an engineer, it is very important to dig into the details what the autonomy really is. And I called it Autonomy Protocol, TTTP protocol, obviously because of my background in engineering work. But what I would like to tell you today and what I found is that actually autonomy has four different dimensions. It is dimension of the time, so we can be autonomous in terms of when we do something. This is an autonomy regarding the tasks. So we can pick up the tasks that we like to develop and the tasks that we can leave to the others. Obviously, that's the topic of cross-functional teams and so on. But in real life, in nowadays companies, we may want to have this autonomous in terms of choosing the user stories, choosing the tasks. Yeah, technology is the most hot topic, right? Because we feel autonomous when we can implement our new technologies, use new technologies. Let's say there were a lot of battles in my previous experience regarding Oracle versus MongoDB. The system was set up on Oracle, and people wanted to go to MongoDB or other non-relational databases, And the company said, no, we need to base on Oracle. And they were complaining, oh, we are not autonomous. Yes, that's right, but that's just one part of the autonomy. And the last one is people. People that you can be autonomous choosing who to work with, in which team to work with, and so on. So it's going to be about when to do something, what to do in a particular day, how to do it, and with whom or with who. And our brain, our technology brain tends to focus on this how I would like to do it. Would I use Java or Scala? Can I use Java or Scala? But actually, if we set our expectations in our mind, we will be more happy at work because think take a time now or after the talk for reflection in your workspace if you are autonomous or not. And if the answer was not, think if you are really not autonomous in front of those four dimensions, not just technology, but time, task, and people. And why it's so important? First things first, is very important to know where we are, because if we are not autonomous in all of the dimensions, four dimensions, maybe that's something that we need to work on, right? So in order to know where we are, we need to reflect. And this is one of the example of the reflection. The researchers from the University of Birmingham, they interviewed 20,000 employees, and they checked autonomous feeling, how the people feel if they are autonomous or not. And the results are, as you can see, that 75% of people, the highest rate, 75 and 4, says that IT autonomous, IT automation is the most autonomous environment. So we are in IT, not maybe, or maybe in IT automation world, but definitely in IT. And the result shows that IT is very flexible and very autonomous in terms of our work. So if the results are so good, why we are, why we are complaining that sometimes we don't have this autonomy? We don't have this autonomy. This is the answer. So size does matter. Employees that working in the smaller companies feel more autonomous. So if you see the right hand side of the slide, a very small company from 0 up to 99 people have the most autonomous environment. People feel the most autonomous at this company. And once the company is going bigger and bigger, autonomous is going down. So that's the question. What's the reason that autonomy is actually going down? And today I will give you the answer. Probably you know the answer already if you were thinking about that before, that it is definitely about size and about the relationships inside the company. This is the sequence that we can call them magical sequence, or sometimes we call them social Fibonacci sequence. That's just the naming convention. But what that really is, that's the sequence that Mr. Dunbar used in his research. So he defined, based on the researches in the corporate environment, he defined that 150 is the maximum number of people that we can build a relationship with. And that sounds easy, right? Sounds obvious that if you have bigger group, it's more difficult to build relationships. And then if you don't have the relationships in a bigger company because you have 1,000 or 20,000 people, there needs to be bureaucracy in place or the processes in place in order for everyone to have the same understanding. And that's why the autonomous is going down, because if we are introducing new processes and everyone needs to follow the processes, autonomy is going down. Dunbar told us that it is 150 is the maximum reasonable number of people that you can maintain the relationship with. But he defined also the four groups, it's rough numbers, but still makes sense that 5 people is very close, is a group of close friends or close family that you spend the most time with, invest the most time with those guys, so you build closer relationship. And then moving further, he defined 15 people as a bigger family or a bigger team or a couple of squads in the corporation. And you still can maintain good level of relationship, but you have less time to invest for those 15 people. And moving on and on, the 150 is the maximum capacity that our brain can handle. And obviously, if we are going on and on, the relationships are less close, still exist, but less close. And this is important to understand what is our group of 5 people, 15 people, and 50 people to make sure that we focus on building relationships with those guys. All right, but what about autonomy then? If we are talking about these relationships, what about autonomy? Um, if the communication is going down, autonomy is going down because of the size of the company, as I mentioned. But actually, it's about trust. So trust is going down because we don't have much time to spend with and to build trust. And we would like to have the opposite direction. We would like to have the autonomy to going up. So that's obviously ideal world. Of in the reality, it can go that way because it's very building trust and communicate with people is very time consuming. But still, we would like to improve this trend. All right, so we talked about autonomy, we talked about the relations in the teams, but what about software design then? How do we, how it's connected with the software design? It is, it is connected. I can tell you that it is connected, and not only I can tell you, but this guy, Mel Conway, quite old guy, but still very active on the IT environment. He has some startups. He runs some startups. He was working as a techie guy as well. Mel Conway. And Melvin Conway told us that organizations are the constraint to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. Once again, we in the organization produce the design which echo or copy our communication structures in the company. Sounds interesting? I can give you the example. Here is the tool ecosystem of the tools that we use. Most likely we are in 2023, so most likely there are new tools incorporated. But what is important here, why I'm showing you that, is because we have the domains of the software process. I will not call them phases. It was in waterfallish environment that we had the phases. Right now, let's call them domains. We have domains of building software. We have domains of testing software, and we use some tools to do that. We have domain to deploy software, run, and so on and so forth, monitor, observe. And the trick is that it's easy environment to build the silos. Uh, when you see observe on the slide the domains, imagine the people who build the software versus people who test the software. It was common in the past. Right now it's not so common, but it was common that QAs and developers were on the separate corners of the organization, and they were sort of competing or fighting between each other. Right now is QA is more embedded skill in the development world, but still it can be difficult. Also the example of building and deploying. Build and deploy, so development and operation, that's the whole movement of DevOps, working together on the same tooling system, on the same knowledge, working alongside developers and operations. Um, and if we would like to improve the software design, we need to think about the structure. So if we have the silos, as I shown you, that's difficult to build the microservices, for example. There was a fight before, or there was an argument before about those who like the component teams and horizontal setup and feature teams and vertical setup. So let's imagine the component team has the separate UI team, separate backend team, and separate database team. They communicate within the teams and they produce something. For example, database guys produce the PLSQL procedures, deliver results. Backend team produce the logic. UA team produce the UI, and so on. And that's how it's very tough. It's not, I wouldn't say not possible, but very tough to build a, for example, microservice or feature within that group, because all those three huge teams need to align together. Instead of that, we can introduce the feature team. So we have one team who has the UX person, backend person, database person, and they are cooperating closely together, building the relationships, and they can easily produce the feature, right? The other example is from the Team Topologies book from Matthew Skeleton and Manuel Perez. This is about, on the left-hand side, you have type of the teams, and on the right-hand side, you have the way of collaboration, communication between those teams. I will not focus on the left-hand side right now, but I will just tell you that there are various different setup of the teams. For example, stream aligned teams who is responsible for producing the end user feature, versus platform team which produce the whole platform for the whole developers, and the other teams like enabling team or complicated subsystem. Complicated subsystem team is like a um, special force, special department, special team to develop some very high risky and important activities, and enabling team enable others to work alongside. But I would like to focus on the right hand side, because on the right hand side you have the ways of collaborating and communicating with each other. So you have the first one is collaboration. Two teams collaborate together on a partnership level to produce something. You can have the X as a service. So we as a team produce some service and we just deliver the API, and we don't cooperate with the other people because we need to reduce the number of the people we can maintain the relationship. So we may collaborate with the collaboration side with other teams, but for this particular team, we just provide the service. And the third one is facilitating, so making sure that all teams are working together, orchestration of those teams. And this setup can influence design because of the trust. As I mentioned, if we have component teams versus feature team, for example, the trust is being built in a different set of people, right? And if we are able to build the trust across our teams, let's say I'm in a team A and I can build trust fairly easily with my A team, but I need someone from team B, it's better for me to have the trustful relationship with this person and say to, let's say, John, hey, John, can you help me? And John will help you as a person because he or he trusts you and he would like to keep the relationship with you, instead of just sending ticket or the email to John saying, hey, I'm from this department, please help me, because it it will take more time, right? John doesn't know you, doesn't trust you. I mean, didn't establish a relationship with you. So the work will be done in the longer way. And for me as an engineer, I would like to dig into the details what this trust is. Our brain should work like this, that we observe world around us and we take some actions and we see the feedback. And again, we observe what is the outcome of an action. But this is not that easy actually. Our brain subconsciously observe our world around us, select the data from the reality, let's say. So we don't have the full capacity to observe everything. So our brain selects the data, add the context to that, so our experiences that we had, for example, if we see the pair programming, I will talk later on about pair programming, but if we see the setup of pair programming, our brain subconsciously can add our experience with pair programming. And if it was a bad thing, we would like to avoid it in the future. Also, our brain makes assumptions about people, about processes, about tools. For example, assumptions Oracle versus MongoDB. Oracle guys have the assumptions that MongoDB is nothing. The Oracle should be there, and vice versa. So we have some assumptions in our heads, and we draw conclusions. And based on the conclusions, we take the actions. So if only we will not reduce that, we will not remove that, but if we can limit our brain in adding the context, making assumptions, that it's more clear decision process. And if we trust others, if we trust the person A, our brain will limit our, assumptions and context meaning, because our brain will feel safe in this environment. So trust for me, it's built with the two separate but important pillars. One pillar is cognitive aspect of trust, and the other pillar is emotional aspect of trust. Cognitive aspect of trust is transmitted through thinking. So all the things that we have, the skill set, the knowledge, the experience, people see that we deliver results, and they can trust us. They say that yes, this guy is good. He or she will deliver what he or she promised. So that's this visible part, and usually we are good at this pillar. The other pillar, though, is emotional aspect of trust. It's transmitted through feeling. So how do people feel when they are with you? Their brain again observe the world around us, seeking the intentions of people, basically asking the questions: Am I safe or not? So seeking intentions: Am I safe with this person? If the intentions of this person is clear and good for me, if this person is open and honest with me, and if so, we tend to call this state or this person that this person is in integrity state. The actions of this person follows the words of this person follows the actions. We can feel comfortable with this person. So basically, if there is one slide that you would like to remember from this presentation, this is this slide, exactly this slide, that trust is the competence and the character. And if we build our competence and if we influence our character, then we can effectively establish trust and get the trust and the autonomy from others. Because cognitive intelligence is quite easy thing, right? We use it every day in our job. We do the analysis, we implement some logic in the code, we use the specific language, especially in the technical world. We use specific language, not only Java versus Scala or English versus Polish, but it's about the specific language, like talking about deployments, for example. Can you imagine explaining to your uncle what the deployment is, even if he or she understands the word? It's difficult, right? It's difficult. So we only can establish the trust if people understand our language. And the other aspect, which is the second pillar that I mentioned, is emotional intelligence. So recognize, understand, and manage our emotions, because if we will recognize in which state we are in the meeting, then we could manage our behavior, or even our feeling, our emotions, and people will feel that yes, this person knows what he or she has inside. And also recognize and understand emotions of others. So basically, if you understand in which emotional state your colleagues are from the room when you run the meeting, you can provide them safe space. For example, if you have the person who talks a lot and the person who is shy. You can understand what's going on. That this person is this who talks a lot is excited, maybe, or sometimes angry, and talks a lot. But this shy guy is actually feeling not secure. So you can say, "Okay, John, I understand your point of view. Please give time to, let's say, Mary, because Mary maybe would like to share with us some things as well." So this type of techniques can help you manage the situation in the room. But to do that, we need to embrace our emotional part. And here right now, if we are talking about emotions, I would like to tell you about Brené Brown. Brené Brown is from US. She's American psychologist, and she does a lot of different research about the courage, about building relationships, and so on. And I'm bringing her here because she said that trust is not being built in the big moments. It's being built in tiny moments every day. Why it's so important for us? Because let's say that we have a new joiner in the team, junior developer joining the team, and the senior guy already working in the team say, "Hey, hello, John, nice to meet you." And his brain subconsciously scans the behavior of this new person. Let's call her Mary, John and Mary. So John's brain scans the behavior of Mary, seeking for those two pillars, delivering the results, and if this person is Mary is open and honest, and seeks this behavior every day in the very tiny moments in the kitchen while working together. And finally, hopefully, they can go alongside together and say, "Hey, we established the initial relationship in the team." That's happy path scenario, right? I'm telling you that because it's important for us to know how the brain works. Because we are exposed to different emotions during, for example, pair programming. If we would be here face to face, I would like to ask you if you like pair programming or not. But usually, I find people mm, who don't like pair programming. I will have some difficulties with that. And why is that? This is because of our fear of being assessed, or our fearing more deeply of being rejected. So if we have two guys working together in the pair programming pair, let's say junior and senior, and senior was John, right? Right, and the junior guy is Mary. So let's say that John is developing the code and Mary is watching, or I mean, this is the second pair in the pair programming, and John can have the fear that, I'm supposed to write a very good code. I'm a senior developer here, right? And Mary is a junior guy, so she needs to observe what I do, and she needs to learn from me. But I actually don't think that my code is so shiny. Maybe I don't, deserve this senior title. Maybe my code is not the best one in the world. And the fear of being rejected by Mary is being activated in our brain. And vice versa. If Mary, as a junior developer, is writing the code, it's more obvious situation maybe that her brain have the thoughts like, "Oh, I'm the junior guy, I'm writing the code, but I supposed to have the good quality of my code, but I'm not, but I don't have because I'm a junior." But the senior guy, maybe he has the expectations that I will write the best code. What about the team? What John will tell the team about my code? And that's how we can feel fear of being rejected by the team. So again, if there is no trust established, we have difficulties in building relationship and having this autonomy of working. Similar mechanism in code review. When we have code review, that's the example that I bring up every time I speak, because I had two developers working together on the code review. One was the author and the other was the assessor. And or the reviewer, let's put it that way. And there was a one pull request with 100 comments inside from both guys, right? And they were sitting next to each other during this time. It was 1 week of exchanging the comments and not speaking to each other because of fear, right? Because the author has the fear that they are assessing him or her. But in reality, the code review is to assess the code, not to have the fight between people, but to assess the code. And now, this is the place where vulnerabilities are coming on the plate. We know vulnerability from the IT perspective. We have even the roles of the vulnerability engineers. So that by the definition, system vulnerability is the flaw or weakness in the system which could be exploited to volatile the system. And we as engineers seek for for these weaknesses and try to fix it. So it doesn't work that way for the human though. For the human, vulnerability is the willingness to show emotion to be seen. So our weaknesses to be seen. And if people see our weaknesses, they feel safe because they feel okay. If this person show our weakness, his or her weakness, it means that he trusts me. He or she put something important for them in front of my presence and my knowledge, so I can also open up. And we are not perfect. We are not our code, for example. If our code is not good enough, this is not about us. This is not telling anything about us. This is telling about the code that we can improve. So that's when the vulnerability comes place, because when you open up, you can build relationships and build a trust. And coming back to the beginning, if you remember the Dunbar's number, it's much easier when you are vulnerable to build close relationships. Obviously, this is not obvious thing to be vulnerable in front of everyone, and this is not even a good idea. But we need to. I tell you that because you need to define the number of people and the exact people who it's worth to be vulnerable with, and who you would like to be. So summarizing a little bit, I would like to show you example of the design or organization design versus the software design. Because in the organization design, it works like this, that if you have the teams set up in a certain way, you will develop, as Conway said, you will develop the architecture that is based on the relations in those teams. On left-hand side, you have the monolith, so obviously very easy setup, operations, quality assurance, and development. Development produce huge monolith, which is, by the way, not so bad thing nowadays. I've heard that some companies are coming back from microservice to the monolith systems, but that's the other topic. But you have this huge development department, produce something, then you put to quality assurance, uh, there are ping pong, I guess, between those two, and then operations deployed finally to production. And that's one big design. On the other hand, if you would like to have the um, microservice or feature teams or microservices oriented design, you need to have separate teams, separate people which take care of the service A versus service B. You need to carve out the responsibilities to effectively work. And then this design of the organization will produce microservice design, and you will be able to get so shiny and beautiful microservice with the API working together. Everything is fine, but actually in real world, a microservice architecture looks like this or even more complicated, right? So if you have services and teams that are inside those services or taking care of those services, you need to also establish not only a REST APIs between the services, but you need to establish your human APIs, I would put it that way. So establish the relationships with the others. So summarizing a little bit for today, how to unlock our autonomy. First things first, be open and honest. So those the one pillar. of trust, and deliver results. That's the other pillar of trust. Then you can define your Dunbar's number and be proactive in the contacts, especially after pandemic. If we are not working face to face in the office, be very proactive. Just call for 5 minutes to colleagues. Also, not only video but phone calls are also right now much easier way to set up rather than video calls. So just proactively spend time with people, and remember, beginning, set your expectations. Not to say that we are not autonomous at all, but sometimes we are not autonomous in one dimension, but we can extend our autonomy in other dimensions. I would like to leave you with a quotation from Brené Brown, that what we know matters, but who we are matters more. Thank you very much for today. Let's stay connected. I think we still have some time for questions if there are any, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn to have a chat about that. Thank you.
Fantastic talk, Tomasz. Thank you so much. I really didn't expect to be hearing about Brené Brown at today's conference, and certainly you've covered a lot of topics that are particularly close to my heart. The ideas of trust in engineering, vulnerability, and autonomy are so very important for us to unlock our abilities. I mentioned in the panel discussion I took part in yesterday about psychological safety and how important that is for us. And it's great to see you kind of reinforcing that side of things, but also covering the necessary empathy that we need in our job day to day. So, while we've got a bit of time for questions and a bit of a discussion, I just wondered, if there's any way that you could see to promoting trust in the short term. So right now we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and we're seeing engineering teams in particular being brought together, and there's going to be a lot of fear on one or both sides of that kind of bringing together. How can we work kind of in the first steps to establish that trust so that we can remove that fear as quickly as possible?
Mm-hmm. Actually, that's a good question, Chris. Thank you for asking that, because my company also went through this process of acquisition and merging, and I observed a lot of challenging setup situations. But what I do, what works for me as my organization, is that bringing people together as quickly as possible, showing them that there is no us and them, but we are the same. If the goals of the companies are different, then that's the different story. We need to align the goals. But first things first, to bring up the people together and show the ways of working. That this group of people, this is the same group of people. The only difference is those people work in a different ways of working mode, and these people work on the different ways of working. So then, if we bring them together to the room, saying, "Hey, let's exchange and share," then there's a beginning, right, and the trust could be established. But this is not an easy thing, so thank you for the question.
No, it definitely is never easy, and we're always going to get them wrong, but hopefully we can get them a bit less wrong each time, right? One other thing that strikes me when you're talking about organization and the kind of softer aspects of this is, how do you bring that message out of engineering and to the rest of the company? Because we have a lot of customers, we have a lot of expectations placed upon us, and we're seen a lot of the time as doers and not necessarily kind of with the HR softer skills. So how can you promote that attitude outside of the engineering org that you're involved with?
It is again not an easy thing, and very difficult. But what I do, I show because it's basically the discussion with the boards and the execs. I show them data from the market, that people stays in the company when they can influence the environment, when they have this feeling of doing things their way. So obviously, this is not easy message for the boards, but there's no the other way. People will leave if they will not feel that they don't contribute.
I think that kind of brings up a little bit more around autonomy, which is some people have this need for control. So you see, some people's management style is micromanagement. Um, I certainly, when you were talking about pair programming, I was thinking my concern with that is me losing control because I'm watching someone else type and I'm thinking, just type faster, do this, that, the other. Um, so, how can we work towards relinquishing some of that control in a safe manner for us in order to enable our peers?
hmm Uh, this is a long term solution, but it will be good for us if we will lose this control. So, and I'm also, the type of the engineer that would like to do everything and know everything and so on. But when I realized that if I will step back and give the people freedom to develop their way, maybe they will produce first things first better software. So I will be more happy with the product. And for me, the benefit for me, because what really works is benefit for me. And the benefit for me, if I step back, is that I will do something more high level, for example, and I have the more opportunity to develop in the other areas. So for me, it worked that I observed the benefits that I could have, mm, letting the control out.
So you mentioned Dunbar's number and you talked about vulnerability. I wondered if you'd encountered Johari windows and how we build interpersonal relationships with vulnerability.
Yes, definitely. From the window that you mentioned is the most important is this blind spot, right? Because what we know, it is visible to us, but we don't know how we are perceived from others. And in order for others to build a relationship with us, we need to seek for the feedback and say, hey, what is how do you feel working with me? This type of very quick questions, but we need to be brave to ask those questions to the people, because we may hear some difficult messages sometimes, right? And it's not an easy thing to be open for the feedback, but if
Yeah.
people see that we are open, they may trust us more.
And kind of jumping off there, I've got a question from Kevin here saying, your fear example was great. I've seen a lot of how new junior developers are afraid of many things, like asking for help, code reviews, and trying new things. How can you avoid this, ensure that juniors and assure juniors that they shouldn't be afraid?
hmm Um, there are two components in that. The first things first, you need to tell and show those people that they are not their code. So they are the humans that worked alongside, but the code is produced, can be better, can be worse. It depends on the mood, depends on the knowledge, depends on various different things. But if you disconnect the code from from the author, that's one thing. And the other, which is really simple, and we don't use it usually, is that, hey, junior guy is a junior guy. If this junior person has a junior in the title, it means that he or she can produce not so nice code, because he just starting with it, right? So give the people feeling that that's okay to have mistakes, that's okay to have the crappy code at the beginning, obviously, right? And that's okay to learn about clean code methods. You don't need to be perfect at the beginning. So I
Yeah.
would put it that way.
That's fantastic advice. And a final quick question from, I hope I'm not really murdering this person's name, Mindaugas. What if there are multiple groups that need to agree on the ways of working? It might be easy with two teams, but what about three, four, five?
hmm Exactly. This is a question about scalability, yeah? How to scale up agile or scale up the trust. And what works for me, again, this is my experience, but what works for me is to have, because you can't build a relationship with everyone, but if you have one person in the team A, let's say, who build a relationship with one person with the team B, and the second person from team A build a relationship with someone from team C, and so on. So this network, we can call them, networking or something, but this is exactly building the close relationships outside of your team, just with one person here, one person there. But if those people are in one room, let's say 5 teams, there are a lot of connections between them, between the people. So that I would model that way.
Excellent. Well, that's it for us in time. Thank you so much, Tomasz, for what's a fantastic message, and hopefully we can all take that to heart and chew it over while we head into lunch. We'll see you back here in about an hour. So thank you very much, Tomasz, and catch
Thank
you
you
all
very
later.
much, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got. Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and high on illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say